Okay, and then we got 3 o'clock, at least where I am. But we're hanging on a couple of more seconds here to see a lot of people joining here. So we just wait a few seconds to get people into their seats and with their coffee in their hand. But I can start by welcoming everybody here to this webinar, getting started with Composable, and a couple of advices to make the transition as smooth as possible. So for all of you who don't know me, my name is Jimmy Ekbäck. I'm one of the co-founders of Octo and the CTO, acting as the CTO. And previously, I've done the same with a company called InRiver. So that's kind of my background, 20 years within this industry. So been through a couple of situations and a couple of techniques. And I usually say these IT cycles go with like in 10 years when something new happens. And we're actually in a pretty interesting state now where we're in the beginning of something new. And that's kind of what we're going to discuss in this webinar. As usual in this webinars, you can post questions as we go along, and I'll try to answer them as fast as I can during the session. But if I can't, I'll reach out to you guys, and of course you can reach out to me whenever, and I'll be more than happy to discuss anything composable or related to that, and for sure anything Octo related. So to kick this off, what is composable? And that's a kind of big question, and there's many things and many definitions around this, but I wanted to start with kind of the definition of within a business and different perspectives within a business. And if we look at this and kind of where composable somewhat originated from and kind of the reason it's here and why we're talking about it is if you look at different timelines and perspective and the frequency things move with, you can look from a technical point of view, from IT, dev, how you build a stack and the architecture. It needs to be very strategic, and it has like longer cycles because you can't change this very fast. It needs to be kind of there's no afterthoughts. You have to kind of put a lot of things into perspective when taking decisions. The next thing, when you look at kind of adding capabilities, if you're sales and marketing and you want to have more reach, or you look at the year, we're going to have these numbers. What new capabilities can I add into my team to make them more efficient? Those decisions tend to be pretty tactical in the way you kind of make decisions in what to bring into the stack. And then you have your daily operations, very operational in the way it changes all the time. Today I have to do this, next I have to do this. So I think this is a great way of looking at different timelines in the way you have to meet things. And in IT, as we said, like the composable, when you build something, there's nobody within IT or any architect that builds something that they don't expect to be performant, to be able to scale, to build in bottlenecks. And that's the reason kind of why we started this from a technical point of view with composable. What is that? But also within a stack, when you buy capabilities in order to achieve certain or different types of goals. But I like this to be strategic, tactical, and operational, and see the timelines you have to do different changes or how you can do different changes. And I'm a big fan of Black Swan and optionality, to have different choices in the way you kind of build your stack and you build your architectures. And for me, within an architecture, composable or microservices gives you those options when you want to change something independently of other things. So decoupling is a very important thing when moving with this. So I had some objections when putting this picture in, but I fought my way through. So in this way, I also like from composability, looking from a technical point of view where I come from and kind of working with a lot of different business challenges. I tend to know, or technical people tend to know, where the limitations are when great innovation or great ideas come. So sometimes you have to use your Jedi forces to sell a no for them to understand what would be the right way to do, or we would like to do it, but we can't do it based on A, B, and C. So kind of everybody wants to say more yes. So composable is also a way to kind of have your stack be more decoupled, and you can change smaller parts of it, adding new capabilities into stack without changing everything or being a monolith when nothing can be changed, and you can't add new capabilities by smaller options or smaller softwares or smaller tactical features that you could add into this. So kind of be more of a yes man and less of a no sayer, and kind of use that Jedi force in order for the rest of the organization to accept that no. So I think that's something that a lot of people in there, I can see some of you in there, like that's something that a lot of you have done previously. So if we break it down further here and look at kind of who came up with the composable term, so Gartner coined this term, and kind of their definition is could be or are defined in these three different levels. So there's one way of saying composable thinking, like the design principles. So use an organization. How would you approach this? What's the benefit by being composable or having a composable stack? What can you achieve with that? So that's one way of looking at it. And I think composable is a mindset. That's something that you kind of, and as we said, both from a business and from an IT point of view. There's also the composable business architecture, kind of how do you structure the capabilities, and how do you kind of have that long-term vision in order to kind of achieve what you set out to do. So that's also something that's part of this. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about where we operate in the composable technology, the stack of how you build this. And I saw a question popping in here, kind of when I now introduce this, talking about composable, where does Mac fit into this, or Mach, as it's sometimes referred, like that's also part of this, and headless, and a lot of these different terms have been floating around during this session. So if we focus on composable technologies, but we bring in the Mac component in this. So this is from Mac Alliance, which is an alliance defining how new or modern softwares are architected, how are they built. And there's a definition in the name, which is microservices, APIs, cloud, native, and headless is part of their definition. And that's kind of so these components fit very well into composable stacks. This is more the definition. Mac is the definition of how these components should be built in order to have scalability and performance given the new state we're in, and how cloud native has changed the way software can be delivered, but also how data can be distributed and consumed in this new state. So this is something that is very relevant. And in the Mac Alliance, you can search for different things. You can look for different components, but I think you should evaluate the components based on their capability, and also if they're to fit in a composable stack, they have to be built with the mindset of they don't own all the data, so they take part of the enrichment or feature set or whatever they add to your capabilities. They should like have a state for a while and then transfer it to something else where they continue to augment on that capability of what you as an organization want to do. But composable, the bigger picture, the stack, the mindset, Mac, a definition of how different softwares are architected and built. So the basis and principles for how they should be built. So that's to the question there. That's where Mac fits into the picture. Looking at different kind of risks and approaches when going composable, kind of what we alluded to before there, like risks are that if you're when everything, as I said, 10-year cycle. So sometimes everything is good within a monolith, everything is within the same system, and sometimes everything is out in different services. And the risk with kind of over architecting that into many different types of capabilities and services is that business teams lose control over their processes because they need to be in several different systems. So that's an important thing to look at, and to avoid this, kind of look at all of these different things before you start like adding too much capabilities, or tactically just adding different types of systems. And this either you call it composable or not, this is still a problem when you have too many systems, and each and every one needs to know what the other one is doing. So that's a generic problem, but in composable, that's kind of the definition of what to do. But there needs to be, because composable and Mac all kind of originated from performance and scalability, but now modern Mac components in a composable stack also look at the business user's perspective, giving them a UI, a backend, in order for them to work and live in a specific state to do their work task in the operations that they live in. So I think that's a one thing, like democratization of these Mac components and also be part of a composable stack. The next one is that there tends to be a lot of disconnected data. There's a lot of time wasted by just moving data around and having different states of that data. So that's a huge risk when looking at a composable stack. How should we make the data available? How should we move the state of the data? Who needs what data and what's changed where? So it's important to look at a data first approach and have that as a long-term strategy when kind of picking and choosing different Mac components into your composable stack. So I think that's an important thing to look at, and also assess the risk and kind of evaluating where you are now and what's needed going forward. Another thing that's usually talked about is kind of the full backlogs and also the pressure on the IT organization and the scarcity of developers, and certainly front-end developers and full stack developers for that sake as well. So that's something that you need to, or a component or a composable component needs to relieve you of that stress. So when investing, there should be something that makes you as a digital team more decoupled from the IT organization, that you feel more empowered in order to do more. It's adding capabilities to your teams, but also that the digital teams can help the developers to build more stuff, to do more of the work that used to be on them, so they also feel relieved and less pressure. So it doesn't become the state where IT is saying a lot of no, as we started with, more yes, and the digital teams can do more with the tools that they have added in the composable stack. So I think that's very important to look at as well when evaluating, to see what's kind of risks and how can these risks be avoided. So looking at this kind of the way to do the transition, there are several ways to go here as well, but kind of as we started with, the key thing here is to map out where the organization and the business needs and wants to go. So that's a key function, and kind of the usual thing. Look at it like in smaller pieces. So pick the best opportunity and the pain for the business. Look at that, and I love the POC, trial and error. That's the only way to know what the path forward is. So that's something that you have to look at and kind of see that and look at it from a business opportunity and business need. The other thing that's needed to be highlighted is that kind of the competence within your own organization, and see kind of where you are in that, evaluating different composable components, looking at the capabilities that are needed, and also either you do this yourself, or if you have a good partner that can help you with this. But there's also a small risk in that, kind of a hidden risk, saying that there's a lot of SI system integrators out there that kind of are in that old state, and now we're transitioning into new state where other things are possible. So kind of evaluating how they view the world, make sure that you have a partner that embraces this new state. So I think that's also something to look at, but a good partner to hold your hand is always important. I think you should always evaluate the different the composable parts, or the different parts in the composable approach when looking at this, like from a technical capability, the way they expect information, data to be fed to them. Do they have a specific model that they adhere to? Kind of how are they scaling? How are they performing? If you have a global approach in what you're doing, there are a lot of things to kind of evaluate based on that. But first, also, what are our business needs? What do we need to do more of? What do we need to double down on? So I think that's also an important thing to look at when you evaluate these different parts that will be your composable stack or a composable approach. And being a bit biased here, I think one of the key things is your data. Kind of how can you connect that and kind of make the change where it's most seen, kind of in front of your customer, but also in front of your employees. Is there a new way to activate data that's been hard before in a monolithic system or in enterprise states to kind of make available to act on your behalf in front of customers or employees. So like make the change where it makes the most impact, or it has the most impact visually, kind of. And with that, you can also buy yourself time in order to kind of change the backend stack, how do we do the transition. And I usually tend to say, like, API has been there for a long time. So like being headless and have an API doesn't change the way you compose the stack, but the way you can scale data, if it's cloud native and the code is the infrastructure, that changes how you can geoscale the system and the data within the systems as well. So that's a huge change in the way you can kind of comprise your stack and what it should be composed of. So these are kind of small like guidelines to make the transition a bit smoother at least. So looking at kind of this more disconnection of data, the challenge of kind of activating data. So what you have probably is like when the transition is being started, you have a lot of data in your commerce. It can be in your different systems. It can be wherever. But what usually you can say commerce, transactional, kind of making sales, converting channels. You can have your PIM, product information management, where you work with the digital versions of your products. And usually they are very flexible in the way you can add more data, more information, more experience data around your product, but you need to activate that data. You can have your customer definition either in the loyalty system or CRM system. If you're a B2B, it can be in a CDP that kind of harvests a lot of data from customer behavioral. But there's also your editorial data that could be in your content management and kind of giving that next level of your content, stories around your different products. But it can be any other system with ticketing, a state of your product. It can be all your ERP data with transactional data, pricing data, partner-specific prices in a B2B setting. But using an activation tool like Octo to have this data unified and activated and performing on your behalf in front of customers in the multi-channel approach. So and kind of having that true omni experience. So looking at whatever front-end channels is out there, like if it's audio, if it's visual, if it's in-store, like if it's geo-scaled or if that's a geographical point of view. So having that data perform in real time in all these different touch points makes a huge difference and can have your composable approach being very much accelerated in the way you can achieve it. So activate and unify data and don't end up in this disconnected state with your data and have a lock-in effect in these enterprise systems. Like activate the data you have. And continue here to move forward with this. We can have some kind of final advice on kind of achieving your composable success. So there is a thing like start where it makes the most impact, kind of where in front of the customer, like partners, customers, employees. Like you have to make the investment where it makes the most impact, and that also buys you time to change your bigger stack, or if it's some of your enterprise stack needs to be updated or changed. So if you have that where it makes the most effect in front of customers, employees, that's a good thing. The next thing that we want to highlight as well, or that I want to highlight, is the partner support, kind of someone to hold your hand through this transition, and somebody that you trust and is well-rounded in this composable mindset. So there is, like as we said, the old way and the new way, and they're so easy to stay in that old state and the old way of doing things. So even though you have a strong in-house competence, and it can be depending on your capability that you have that knowledge within, but it's also great to have an outside perspective of your inside knowledge and inside stack and decisions that you're taking there. So I think that's an important thing to kind of, as always, the community and the ecosystem you operate within. And then, as we emphasized before, kind of your way of connecting data and activating data. So away with those kind of monolithic silos, and some way and somewhere these enterprise systems that holds a lot of your data, they're architected to be system of records. They can't share data in the way that some of these composable components expect. But with a tool like Octo, it can be activated and accelerated in a great way to kind of make these transitions step by step. So big bangs are hard to kind of have success with. So we're over the time that we had here, but kind of I wanted also to highlight that this is a series that we're doing, kind of discussing Composable, and we have a lot of people in this this webinar and in our ecosystem that are very interested in kind of driving this change. But the next one is 15th of February, so it's 3 ways to kind of do the transition, and more kind of in detail how customers in the Octo family has done this transition and change with Octo as an accelerator. So I think that could be very interesting to share with the team here and with everybody in this session. And I see there's a lot of questions here running in there, but I'll take my time and share them and contact with you in DM, so we can kind of have those discussions there as well. And with that said, like, get in touch. There's no way or nothing stopping you guys to kind of engage with us and have a discussion with us around this, Octo in particular, but composable approaches in general as well. We love discussing all of this. So with that said, I would like to thank all of you for joining me in this chat around composable approach and composable in general, but also less of those Jedi forces and more yes out there. So thank you very much for this session, and have a good Wednesday.